Hello everyone, nubkeks here. Welcome back to Nub Raids. Hope you're having a great weekend. Today is the last day for the Raf-Matab Guaranteed Legendary event. You can get him as a Guaranteed Legendary if you open 120 Ancient Shards. Well, I did that. I have him. Level 60. I have him fully booked and all the rest. Fully built. We're going to go in. I'm going to show you how I built him, and we're going to see what he can do for you in action so we can make that decision. Is he good? Is he bad? Is it worth it? Is it not? So yeah, let's dive in. Quick refresh of his kit. He has a 60 resist in all battles aura. That's actually really strong. His A1, 50% chance to increase the cooldown of a target skill by 2 turns at random. 100% chance to increase the cooldown if they've less than 50% HP. His A2 is a 3-turn AoE attack, 100% chance to provoke when booked, and it gives him for 1 turn, and it gives him block damage for 1 turn as well. And then his A3, 4-turn cooldown when booked, 50% increased resistance buff, 30% reflect damage buff for your whole team for 2 turns. And then he has 50 bonus resistance whenever none of his skills are on cooldown. So there he goes. How have I built him up then? So the way that I've built him up is actually in a Guardian set, and I built him with high resistance. Well, actually only medium resistance for my account. Not super high. But obviously some of my gear is not fully rolled up. This is what I've been aiming for, though. So we've got high HP, right? I've got 65k. I think when everything's fully rolled up, he'll be pushing 70k. So nice and tanky. Got about 2,000 defense, so he's pretty defensive. His speed is 207. With glyphs and things like that, I want to push this higher. I actually think that probably about 230 plus, like 231, 232, around about that, would be just the right amount of speed, because that's the speed where you'll start outspeeding most of the Doom Tower bosses, even on their top difficulty of hard, even without an aura. He just randomly has some crit rate, 50%. Crit damage, not a priority at all. Then for resistance and accuracy, I prefer actually to get his accuracy a bit higher. Obviously, when I fully glyph him and I roll up his banner, he has an accuracy banner on. This will get better, but I'd like to be pushing, 300 plus accuracy. And about 300 resistance actually is going to be good most of the time. Most of the time, that's going to be plenty because he's giving himself that increased resistance buff, which, 50% more is going to be pushing him up to 450. If we include his aura on that as well, he's going way over 500 with increased resistance, which is going to be plenty for nearly all PvE content. It'd be pretty decent in PvP as well. For specific sets, I have him as well in a Guardian set and a bit of Stone Skin. Stone Skin give him some HP and some resistance, so that's really, really nice. I think if you're using him for PvP, like for Arena only, you could even give him a full Stone Skin set, and I think that's a pretty good combo. That's what makes him kind of good there, because he can be a bit slower, and you build him with good resistance. He's going to have that bonus 50 resistance at the start of the arena fight, so he can probably resist the strips, especially with Stone Skin. There's a 50-50 anyway. Then he can put increased resistant, reflect damage on your whole team, and then next round he can come in and do his AoE provoke, give himself block damage, so he get block damage on the turn after your 2-turn Stone Skin falls off. So that's how I'd build him if I was building him for PvP. Building him for PvE though, I'd be giving him Guardian set. I think this is really nice. He has high HP, gives him some self-healing, absorbing damage dealt to allies. I think he's pretty good at this, seeing as, well, I mean, he gives himself that block damage, right? He gives himself block damage potentially every 3 turns, which gives him like a turn for that Guardian set to start healing him back up, and where that damage absorption from your allies is just going to be knocked into the block damage. So that's sort of the theory right there. For specific pieces, just speed on the weapon. Again, plenty of room to glyph most of these. We've got accuracy and actually crit rate on the helmet. We definitely get him a helmet with like speed or resistance would be good. I just don't have any. Again, no accuracy or resistance on this, so that could definitely be upgraded. So he's got HP, and he's like 60k plus HP. I think it's absolutely tons. HP percentage gloves. Again, no accuracy or resistance, so you can easily push these stats higher. Now, resistance chest piece, I think that is important. And then I gave him speed boots. That is important as well. For the rings, and we're going for pretty much HP or defense, either or. HP on the neck. Again, trying to get necklaces with resistance and accuracy rolls. You want both. And then accuracy on the banner with some speed. I think the nice thing about accuracy on the banner is that if you do want to use him in a Hydra team, accuracy does nothing at the moment for him in Hydra at all. There's literally nothing. So you can switch out his banner for like a resistance banner or a HP banner or something else. You can switch the banner out and you'll be good. For his masteries, this is what I've done with him. So I've sent him down the right-hand side of the tree to get War Master for a bit more damage against bosses, which is, I think, the main place you're going to use him. Gave him Life Shrinker for some healing as well. Then I gave him some bonus resistance here. More healing. It's nice. Received. Less damage from AoE attacks. These are nice just to go alongside that Guardian set. Resurgent. Chance to remove debuffs. Not probably going to be super useful, but no real harm in it. Delay death. Now, this one is actually quite crucial, I think. This one looks really good. Solidarity. Gives everyone 5 more resistance for each buff placed on them by this champion. So he puts out increased resistance and reflect damage, AoE. And then I presume that this gets increased by the increased resistance buff. So this is effectively giving your entire team, 15 bonus resistance, right? 5 plus 5 multiplied with a bonus 50%, and you get 15. I think that's how it works. So that's kind of nice. And obviously his block damage on himself gives him an extra 5. And then I just gave him some stuff to counterattack. Because why not? You could give him Cycle of Revenge. But I think something like this, to me, looks pretty good. He's not really placing any debuffs that can be extended, so I didn't want to send him down the support tree, but you could as well. I think that this defense tree is better, but you could send him down support tree. But I kind of like him like this. So yeah, where is he going to be good? Well, I think the main place he's going to be good, we can dive in. Oh, I've got clan boss rewards to collect. Unfortunately, I missed a day of Doom Tower Hard, so I've got no gold keys and I'm capped out at floor 70. I think 80 might be the dragon. It might be 90 though. So unfortunately, I can't test this on, it would be great to test it on floor 120, but I can show you a spreadsheet of what he would do. And what I've done, I've thrown together a team like this. I think it's going to be really, really good for taking on this Eternal Dragon. And let me explain why, right? The Eternal Dragon and several bosses in Doom Tower have obviously got these really, really nasty debuffs that can be used against you. And being able to resist those debuffs is going to help you out an absolute ton. Now, the Eternal Dragon, on top of that, on top of having a bunch of nasty debuffs and increasing the cooldowns of your skills and doing a whole ton of stuff that you want to resist, on top of that, he also is vulnerable. He's unique in the bosses. He is vulnerable to having his cooldowns increased. So that A1 ability from Raf-Matab, that can come in and can actually increase the cooldowns of this boss. So I think this is basically like his best place in the game, is going up against this boss. We'll just take a quick look to see how he performs in here. And I'll show you the spreadsheet then of how this will actually apply to other bosses. Although, like I said, I haven't been able to test it yet. But it looks very promising, to be honest. This looks to be the sort of the best thing that he can do. The team that we've built around him, we have him in the lead for the resistance aura, which is totally good. We've got Geomancer in there to reflect damage on the boss. I will just click on the boss to make sure we keep putting decrease attack, hopefully. No. Well, to make sure we at least burn the boss. Here we go. We put on our increased resistance. I had it turned off until now. He's got really cool animations, by the way. And you can see that now we're going into this and none of our cooldowns are going to be reduced, which is just absolutely fantastic. Look at that. Increased cooldown. Watch the boss's cooldowns whenever Raf-Matab hits him. And I think one of the big things to look for as well is going to be if you can put him in any revenge accessories, their increased cooldown, he just got an extra 2 turns on Spirit Rush. Like, this is so good. You will want, for floor 120 hard, you will want, like, you'd prefer to have 350 accuracy, to be honest. You could do with like 300 accuracy would be fine. I only have him with 200 right now. So with the gear I have on right now, you wouldn't be able to actually successfully debuff this boss right here. So that's definitely something to watch out for, right? Definitely something to watch out for. Decrease attack goes on. Good. Very, very important. And another nice thing is that he's also going to be protecting us a significant chunk, not always, but a significant chunk from all this decreased defense stuff that these side ads can do, which is what's really, really going to get you killed and put you in a bad spot. It's when the boss gets his damage boost and you've decreased defense from these side ads, because he's going to be giving you that increased resistance, it's broadly speaking going to be protecting you. And there you go. That's actually my fastest run. 70 turns, 2 minutes 27 against floor 40. You're going to have something similar even on floor 120, I think. But yeah, Jarag is in there to give us a bunch of healing with his passive. Ally protection, increased defense. Demitha is in to heal us up, top us up. Stanlash Survivor procs ally protection if we ever do start getting nuked down low. And we also have extend buffs from Demitha and Sandlash Survivor. They both extend our buffs, which should hopefully give us pretty clean uptime on that increased resistance. Now, if you play this on manual, it would obviously get much easier, be much more consistent. And of course, any revenge accessories on Raf-Matab become really good. But yeah, another thing that makes him a good combo with the Geomancer here is Geomancer with his A1 can put decrease accuracy, and that's very strong. Let me show you the spreadsheet, because I think this is actually the best way, but this is the best way to illustrate what I think the strengths of this guy are, okay? I think this is the best way to illustrate his strengths. So let me merge that across. There we go. Okay, and what I wanted to look at was, we'll look at the individual bosses, we'll look at the accuracy that they have, resistance we need, and then we'll start factoring in like increased resistance buff, the resistance aura. So first of all, we've got the Scarab boss, and even the hardest version of Scarab only has 250 accuracy, right? 250 accuracy. So what do we need to consistently resist it? Well, generally speaking, I'm looking for 100 to 150 more resistance. It's a bit sort of loose, obviously. You know, the more resistance you have, the greater your chance to resist becomes. It caps out, I think, around about 150 more resistance in the accuracy. It caps out at a 97% chance to resist. I believe with about 100 more, you're getting most of that benefit. You're at like probably 93%, I think, or something like that. Like you've got a good chunk of the benefit, and then beyond that point, it becomes lesser and lesser. So I'm going to say, I'm just going to go with like the 350, like 100 more resistance. It's being a pretty good margin against these Doom Tower bosses, where you can let a debuff occasionally sneak in, because you can just rerun the boss, right? You can just rerun the boss. Now, how much resistance do we need then with increased resistance? If we're going to shoot for 350, this becomes, whoops, that is not, that's the wrong button. That's not Control V, that's just a normal V. You only need 234 resistance then to start consistently resisting Scarab when you have that increased resistance buff, because it's going to give you that extra 50%, which is going to push you up to like that 350 mark. And when we include the resistance aura, which is giving you that flat bonus 60 resistance, which can then be increased, if you build champions with only 174 resistance, you put the Raf-Matab aura in there, and you give them the increased resistance buff, they're going to resist Scarab, they're going to resist his decreased speed, they're going to resist his provokes, resist the buff steals, they'll resist all of that with only 174 resistance, which is really easy to do. And we do the same thing with Frost Spider. So Frost Spider has 300 accuracy. Now the minions with Frost Spider, the Spiderlings, only have 250, I think. But he has 300 accuracy, and he can strip off your buffs. He can freeze you. He can do all sorts of nasty things. He can put block debuffs. I think he can block healing and stuff like that. So you're going to need 400 plus resistance to resist him. Well, with increased resistance and the resistance aura, this increases. I don't know why some of these tiles don't have the full whatever square on them anyway, but 267 with increased resistance and you're good, or 207 if you include his resistance aura. So this is actually, again, really not bad. You build your champions up with 207 resistance, put him in the lead, put on increased resistance, extend the buff if needed, and you're going to resist most of what he does most of the time. Very doable. The Eternal Dragon, who we looked at just here, he actually is higher. He has 350 accuracy. Okay, he has 350. He's also faster than these other bosses. I believe these other bosses are 230 speed, whereas the Eternal Dragon is 250. And I think that's where old Raf-Matab's passive comes into play. I think that's where his passive really comes into play, which is you build him to be faster than like Scarab and Bommel and Frostbiter, but he will be outsped by Eternal Dragon, but his passive will protect him. You know, that extra 50 accuracy that they have, that's basically what this makes up for, right? I think that's what's going on there. That's the purpose of this design. When you get the increase resistance aura, and let's put some squares on that, much better. You need 300 with his aura as well, 240. Then, of course, the hardest one by far, Bommel has 750 accuracy. So you're really looking at 850 to 900 resistance. When we include the increased resistance or our resistance aura, it becomes more doable. Like, how do you build anyone with 900 resistance? I just don't think that's even possible. Maybe the best few players in the game could do it, but almost impossible while still having other stats. With the resistance aura, you only need 507, which is doable. Still really hard. Building someone with 507 resistance is still hard. But that's not all, because of course, decrease accuracy also exists. Decrease accuracy is a thing. And this is really going to switch things up. So, for example, with the Scarab, this is where it gets to me pretty exciting. If I could press Control V, there we go. Scarab, his accuracy drops by half to 125. We actually need much less. With increased resistance buff, we only need 150 resistance. We give ourselves a resistance aura, and we only need 90 resistance. This is for the hardest version of Scarab, right? The hardest version of Scarab, if you put decreased accuracy on him, and you bring Raf-Matab's aura and increased resistance, 90 resistance from gear is enough. So in other words, if you have a maxed Great Hall, you only need another 10 resistance to consistently start resisting everything the Scarab does with these buffs, which is pretty great. For Frost Spider, it starts to look like this, right? Looks like this. 167 or 107, not bad. Eternal Dragon starts to look like this. Becomes much, much more doable, right? And even Bommel, this is a pretty big deal here. Bommel becomes doable with potentially only 257 resistance, which is kind of insane. That's kind of a huge, huge deal. So all this sort of stuff becomes a lot more doable when we start to combine these buffs. When you combine increased resistance, resistance auras, and a decreased accuracy debuff, you can start to do some pretty cool things. I think the Frost Spider might have some ways to cleanse himself, and obviously the Eternal Dragon can take extra turns, so you do need to be careful about that stuff. But just generally speaking, it becomes kind of exciting. So we could look at comboing him with someone like Tatura Rhymehide. When he's booked, he's 100% chance to place decreased accuracy. That's pretty cool. Or of course our Geomancer, who's going to be really good against these bosses as well. Geomancer has a 40% chance when booked to put decreased accuracy. We give him Sniper. That's a 45% chance on his A1 to put decreased accuracy for 2 turns. That becomes, again, pretty good as well. And potentially there are teams we could build around this. So for me, this actually looks pretty interesting. I think this is the real purpose of Raf-Matab. But you have to build teams around it. You're going to try build teams with with decent-ish resistance, bring decreased accuracy, and Raf-Matab, and you can really potentially smash through some of these bosses. Now, of course, the thing is, for a lot of, certainly for me, speaking personally, I've beaten all these Doom Tower things, so it's not helpful to me. I've already beaten the bosses. I already have teams that work. It's probably not going to help me. Maybe it will help me with Bommel. We'll test that out next month. But if you've beaten these bosses, it's not that useful. It might be useful if they ever add another rotation, a 4th rotation of Doom Tower, or if they ever add, like, I'm probably in the way of this, but if they ever add a Nightmare or Ultra Nightmare or Brutal Difficulty Doom Tower, which I think is possible and will come at some point, he'll be great for that, but that could be a good way out. So, it depends. Are you progressing on Doom Tower? If you are, I think he gives you a lot of answers to those bosses. If you're not progressing on Doom Tower, if you've beaten it already, then obviously not so useful there. And that's really his main purpose. That is his main purpose. Now, when we come to Hydra, he's a little underwhelming, to be honest, but just in terms of the accuracy stuff. So Mischief, the head of Mischief in Hydra, on normal has 250 accuracy, so it's the same as Scarab. On hard, it's 310, brutal 345, and nightmare 350. It only goes up by 5. I'm hoping they will nerf this stuff. They have announced that there are some Hydra nerfs in the works. We don't know what they are, but I'm hoping they might nerf some of that, some of the stats on the heads on the lower difficulties. So nightmare sort of comes equal to Eternal Dragon. And this is where you have some potential, for sure, again, with Raf-Matab, right? Just with the resistance aura and increased resistance, any champions with 240 resistance, with Raf-Matab powering them up, will resist even on Nightmare. If you get decreased accuracy out there, I mean, literally anyone can do it. I mean, like, even someone like a Royal Guard, whatever, like a damage dealer who's built with no intention of having any resistance, if you've got your Great Hall built up, they will start resisting that head as well if they ever happen to be hit. So this opens up some certainly intriguing possibilities. I will say for Hydra, when it comes to it, like, how do you design a team with him in it? Because he takes up a whole slot. It becomes a bit awkward. You could definitely slot him in in place of like some of your typical Mischief tanks. You could slot him in there. But the thing is, right now, he's not bringing anything else to Hydra. Is sort of the downside. And it's a pretty big downside. Because there's no Hydra heads at the moment that are vulnerable to having their cooldowns increase. There's no Hydra heads that are vulnerable to provoke. So that's a really big weakness. That being said, I do think it's quite possible they could add a head in the future that's vulnerable to provoke. I think it's even more likely they could add a head that's vulnerable to having its cooldowns increased. I think that's a pretty likely thing to come. Obviously, that's not guaranteed. But if that ever does come, this becomes good. And the other big thing, of course, is that if they ever add in, like if they come in and they say like, you know, Ultra Nightmare, it's in caps for reasons, and they say, okay, now the head has 500 accuracy. You're kind of going, oh my god, how do we deal with this 500 accuracy? We need like 650 resistance now. Or what if they come in and say it's like Bommel? They go, it's got Bommel stats, super ultra nightmare, 750 accuracy on Mischief. You know, how do you build champions to actually stop their buffs being stolen and stuff? It's really, really hard. That because you need like 800 to 900. That's where Raf-Matab, a champion like that with increased resistance, could become really good. So it's sort of future looking. Now, I've got a little clip here. Let me show you this. So this was running him against Hydra. I wanted to test out his reflect damage because that's the other part of what he does. So what we have here, boom, here he comes. We have the Head of Wrath. This is on hard Hydra, testing it on hard. We have the Head of Wrath. He doesn't have decrease attack, and he does have his damage buff, and he's just doing his A1. So it's just his A1. But he has the Vengeance buff, so that's bonus damage. No decrease attack on hard Hydra. We do have Strengthen and increased defense on most of the team here. There's a few champions that don't have increased defense. Most of them have Strengthen. Some of them have increased defense. And we can watch this. Boom, the hit comes in. And you can see the reflect damage ticking up right now. You can see we got pretty big chunks. Like Royal Guard was low on life, but he got chunked. I guess we're not getting crazy chunked. We could certainly take more damage than this and reflect it back. But this is something along the lines of what you'd be aiming for. And obviously on Brutal or Nightmare, you'd be aiming to bring a decreased attack for this head. We can see the damage come in. We've got like 5k, can't see what that one is, 2k, almost 4k, 3k, 6k. So he's going to go from 2 million and, well, let's go for 39,000 here, 39,000. It ticks up to 66,000. So it's honestly kind of underwhelming. I was a bit underwhelmed by this. I was hoping for more from reflect damage. Yeah, we're looking at something like 30,000 damage reflected back on hard. And it's not even going to be that much more on the higher difficulties right now because you'd be bringing in decreased attack. It would do more, but not crazy amounts. So, I mean, like if we look at this, here he comes in with his A1 and like... But his A1 counterattack did 15,000 and War Master did 27k, you know? So we did more damage with his counterattack proccing War Master than we did with the actual reflect damage on the whole team. So I feel like the reflect damage is actually... I was really disappointed. I was hoping it would do more, seeing as Geomancer does so much. I think part of why Geomancer does so much, he reflects 15% of the damage, but that is based off of... he also does max HP damage whenever he's hit, where he can, which adds up to a ton. That's the other part of his passive. And obviously he can burn multiple heads, so it starts deflecting onto multiple heads. The problem with Raf-Matab and reflect damage is it's only going to reflect damage really onto Head of Wrath, maybe a bit onto Blight or Suffering, but most of the other heads, you know, if they're not doing AoE attacks, it's not going to really do anything to them. So that's another sort of issue with that. The other very big issue is that any damage you take to shielding, shields don't reflect damage. So if you put shields on your team, which you probably should, shields are really good for Hydra, reflect damage does nothing. You'll probably notice this working to your benefit if the Head of Wrath or the Head of Suffering, who can put reflect damage on themselves, if they do that and they get like the shield from decay or something like that, and you slam them with a Royal Guard, you'll notice that your Royal Guard doesn't instantly die. It's because he doesn't take any damage from reflect damage if you're hitting a shield. So that also really reduces the value of this for Hydra. So honestly, for Hydra, right now, I actually don't see his value. This is... Okay, my broad overall review of Raf-Matab. Is he good? I think he's very, very good for Doom Tower progression. When it comes into Doom Tower progression, I think he's actually excellent. He's really good. It gives you a whole bunch of different options for taking on these really tough, well, potentially really tough bosses. Even at the top of Doom Tower Hard, yeah, he gives you a really good way to potentially deal with them. Scales very strongly with anyone that can increase your buffs. That's where it starts to get really, really good. But you can protect your team from buff strips, from Frostbite or from Scarab, from their cooldowns being increased by Eternal Dragon. Potentially gives you a way to beat Bommel, which is very, very difficult. So I think there's tons of potential there. I think he's very good for that. He's also going to be pretty decent for some of the waves. Like I'd say, for example, because the Provoke is really good for the waves. Particularly, I would say you've got Madame Ceres and what's his name? Warlord. Any of the waves with Madame Ceres or Warlord, he becomes really good there. There's a really tough wave kind of around floor 40, like weirdly difficult wave around floor 40 of the first rotation of Doom Tower, which is like 3 Madame Ceres and 2 Warlords or something like that. Very difficult to beat, you know, the first time you get there. Becomes much more doable with this guy. So he's pretty good for Doom Tower progression. Elsewhere in the game, I'm not really seeing it, though. I'm not really seeing it yet. For Hydra, it's very much a future-based thing. It's, okay, will they add more difficulties of Hydra where increased resistance will become pretty much essential? Because right now it's not. Right now you can build your champions with enough resistance to do their job. And that's generally speaking going to be better because this reflect damage still isn't doing too much. And his A1, A2 don't actually do anything useful for the Hydra as it is right now. So it's very much a future looking thing. It's okay. But I think it's quite likely though, right? They add more difficulties and increased resistance becomes mandatory. Then he's really good. And especially if they ever add a Hydra head that can have its cooldown increased or Hydra heads that can be provoked. And I think it's likely that one of those two is probably going to happen. Then he becomes a really good option. He's got a great aura. This becomes really good. So it's sort of that open question. It's sort of a question. What do you think? For me, at 120 Ancient Shards, I think there's no reason not to get this guy. I think he's good for that. Let's actually throw him into some Faction Wars as well while we're here. We can sort of see him doing his thing right there. So I'll come in and yeah. So like for 120 shards, for me, he's definitely worth it. Let's take out Altan and put in Raf-Matab. There we go. Super Raid. Oh, I didn't click Super Raid. Well, rip. Doesn't matter. Yeah, for me, it's worth it. But for you, it might not be. It really, really depends and whether you think you can actually build teams around it. Like I said, unfortunately, we can't test everything, so I can't see everything right now. But I think he's got potential. I think he can be pretty decent. He's obviously not S tier. He's not God tier. And you really do need to build teams around him. If you're not building teams around him, he's going to completely flop. So there you go, guys. That's my thoughts on Raf-Matab. Thank you for watching. As you can see, I mean, he's good for Faction Wars too, right? That AoE provoke, he's going to protect us from the fears and stuff from the boss, which is nice. Yeah, guys, there you go. Let me know what you think of this guy. Yeah, I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.